Right, hi everybody, and welcome to this week's Talent Talk. I welcome James Lancaster back to our Talent Talk. We did episode 1 of this about 8 weeks ago, and we were talking about content and how you can use content we're in recruitment. It's really all about generating candidates. It's all about driving the talent pipeline. And we're going to talk about a whole variety of things that are related to that. We're going to go through, James is going to go through a kind of checklist of different things that we need to think about. And then we're going to do a fun quiz. So James is the expert around content, and he's going to ask me some questions he uses in training the writers that he works with. So James, do you want to first just give us a quick intro?
Well, hello everybody. Nice to see you or to be seen by you again. So I'm a managing director of a company called Scribe. We work with publishers, agencies, and direct clients on content. So we provide editorial support through to copywriters, through to Twitter feeds, bloggers, etc., for a whole variety of clients. Within recruitment and education mainly, but also in other what used to be called classified or specialist vertical markets.
Yeah. Okay, because your background's within media, so
media, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Classified meaning things like, so I guess you were responsible for things like the motoring section.
Absolutely, yeah, for my and fine arts, which anyone who knows me, I ran fine arts at the Telegraph for 7 years, and anyone who knows me knows that's a marriage made in heaven. So it was what used to be called is now sort of vertical markets, specialist markets. Yeah. So I launched education at the Telegraph, ran recruitment, property, motors, travel, things like that.
Cool. Okay, so right, what are we talking about?
Well, first up was your social media experimentation, didn't you? You took a month off.
Yeah, well, I took pretty much 2 months off, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. So I started in probably end of July. One thing that I realized was I was getting really, really frazzled with the amount of communications I was getting through multiple channels. And so it wasn't actually the number of individual messages I was getting. It was the fact that I was getting them replicated at so many different channels. And I decided to switch some off and try and consolidate. So I chose Twitter and Facebook as an experiment and decided to first of all, I got rid of the apps from my phone.
Right.
Which stopped me noticing that I was getting notifications every 2 or 3 minutes. And of course, that's the biggest part of the social networks. They focus a lot of time and money and effort on getting you to spend every waking minute on their product inside Facebook.
The like button is designed specifically for that, isn't it? It's that sort of the drug of other people, the affirmation that you receive if somebody likes what you've written.
Yeah, that's it. And it releases dopamine in humans when they see that other people like them. It validates them. And there's a whole variety of other things they do, like the endless scrolling feed of it doesn't stop, stops feed of updates from your contacts and stuff like that. I wasn't actually spending a lot of time scrolling that stuff. It was more so that I was posting things so regularly, like a constant stream of consciousness, that I was responding to the people that were responding to what I was saying. So I thought, I'm going to try and consolidate here. So I've spent about 6 weeks now without the Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter apps. And I know I definitely spend less time on social media. But the big question is, for me, is what am I missing out on? Because actually I was getting a lot of useful information from some Facebook groups like Talent Product Plays, for example. It's all about recruitment technology. And I was getting a lot of useful information from that. So I guess the question is what, and I know I've won customers from Facebook.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because there's two things there, isn't there? One is, Twitter it used to be, I think 90% of people on Twitter are voyeurs, are inactive. They use it for curation of their own feed, but they don't necessarily contribute. And so it's an information portal for most. Yeah. And so firstly, by deleting it, did you miss the information? Did you feel you weren't as current? But secondly, I guess I'd ask, in terms of your Facebook, you mentioned business from it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, isn't it? So in terms of engagement from new suppliers, new clients, new network opportunities, any hard and fast findings yet, or is it all anecdotal?
I mean, no, no hard and fast findings. But I mean, one of the top 5 recruitment agencies in the world signed up as a customer with us about 3 or 4 months ago on the basis that their EMEA marketing director had seen some things that I'd shared on Facebook around talent pipelining and around the software that you need to automate it and things like that. So I'm not sure. It's going to be quite difficult to measure, really. But one thing I do know is I have had more time in my life because I've got rid of the Twitter and Facebook apps. And I think I am definitely going to continue to have them off my phone, because the temptation when it's flashing and says there's somebody's, you've got a notification, the temptation is to go on there. And when your phone's flashing the whole time, you're spending all your time on it. It's actually flashing right now. I'm going to turn it over. But I think that LinkedIn's had a resurgence in the last 6 months as well. I've got to be honest. I think that LinkedIn has reaffirmed its status as the most important professional network, because it was shifting to Facebook, but it's definitely given me some time back. I am tempted to get rid of WhatsApp because if people want to contact me, they can send me a text message. You can create groups in Messenger. There's, I don't think I'll be missing out on much by removing WhatsApp. But yeah, consolidating my communication channels has been something that I think so far I'm quite happy with it. And I'm
any changes to the style of communication you've been getting? Because obviously, the sales teams of all those people would talk about, you use Facebook in a different way that you'd use LinkedIn, that you'd use Twitter, etc. That indeed you'd use WhatsApp. Any changes to the style of comms?
I mean, I don't know. I not from me, no, because I talk with a reasonably informal tone on LinkedIn anyway. So, and I mean, I used to wear pinstripes for like 20 years. I wore pinstripes and I don't anymore. I've got a cardigan and a rugby top on. I'm much more casual than I was then. So I feel like my tone on Facebook is pretty much the same tone as it was on, and I wasn't using it for anything personal really anyway. So,
okay,
yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's been an interesting experiment. I'm gonna put a blog together at the end of this month and just explain kind of what I think it's done. But so far, probably just getting rid of the apps from the phone has been something that's been a good one.
Okay, interesting.
So we're going to go on to, you were talking about, in the last session that we did together, you were talking about some of the kind of hot things that you need to do. A lot of customers of ours, they say to me, the problem with candidate ID, a lot of potential customers say the challenge with candidate ID is going to be that we're going to need to create a lot of content. And my advice is you can be a very, very powerful communicator and generate a lot of goodwill with people if you are a curator. And so I wanted to talk to you a bit about the whole issue around, repurposing content. And I know that you've put together a bit of a checklist of things that you think we need to be thinking about. So why don't you give us some of your hot kind of tips around content and repurposing?
Yeah, so, I mean, one of the things we talk about when we are talking to a new client, prospective client, is two things really. One is obviously choice of channel. There isn't a requirement for everybody to do everything all the time, and which speaks to what we've been talking about. Is just because there is Instagram doesn't mean you need an Instagram policy or a strategy if you decide that is not right for you. Instagram, for example, works very well on luxury brands, because it's a highly visual medium, and but for everybody else, maybe not. So there's no harm, no foul in deciding not to do a channel. I think, and having the confidence to do that. Then we talk about
just on that. I mean, that's actually one that I've never done. So Instagram's one that I went on to. I had a look around and I just went, this isn't for me, and I left after about 15 minutes because it seemed to be visual things. To me, are often very superficial, and I'm not interested in superficial things, and that's why Instagram didn't appeal to me. And I often say, people say to me, how's Instagram useful for recruitment? And my response is, it's the best channel for finding and hiring narcissists and sycophants.
Right. Well, possibly. Well, it's very good for luxury brands. So luxury brands, Bentley, for example. I think I'm right in saying Bentley don't use Facebook and do 90% of their stuff through Instagram, because it's a ultimately incredibly visual lifestyle channel. So you're right. I struggle to think instantly how it would be a recruitment channel, but I'm sure someone out there will tell us if we're wrong. But the point being, choose your channel. You don't have to do everything. Secondly, again, most clients will say, well, I don't have the budget, I don't have the capability or the resource to produce, the sort of content or the sheer volume of content that we would need to be a destination. And I think, I don't really know what that means. When I used to work at the Telegraph. To be a news site, they talk about 6 pieces of content a day before you'd even start to be regarded as a news destination. And who apart from a national newspaper has got that sort of time or resource? But that doesn't mean you can't do a targeted, very good job within your particular area. So first things first is to really look at what you already produce. The first thing we would say to anybody is talk to colleagues in marketing department, talk to colleagues out within the HR department, within the internal comms department, talk to the sales team. What sales collateral do they have? There's a huge amount of information that most businesses will be disseminating through a number of different channels that you can either use straight in a straight cut and paste or repurpose. So, sales now is very largely data led. The decisions on sales channels are data led. So if they're leading with and have done their work around data, and I'm sure they have, there's going to be a plethora of stuff that you can take and either quote directly or repurpose. Audience numbers, number of interactions, engagement with the product, why people are engaging with the product, feedback from clients, what they love about the company. All this stuff can be either quoted or repurposed for the recruitment messaging and the candidate messaging. Don't forget, a particular bugbear of mine is the belief that recruitment marketing has to follow every single marketing rule. In a way, you've done your segmentation before any sort of broadcast message that you might send out, so that you can almost move into a keep warm, much more detailed, much more personalized message before any broadcast or straightforward marketeer might do. So, a lot of the channels and a lot of the content that you're able to use and repurpose will by definition be quite narrow cast, because you're talking to people in a certain job with a certain skill set. So talk to colleagues. Yeah, would be my first checkpoint.
Carrie's made a good point, which is actually, we're talking about Instagram there. She saw a JavaScript developer on Instagram, and his hashtag JavaScript showed up in stories, and so I guess finding people. Based on what they're hashtagging in Instagram. I mean, JavaScript's not a very visual thing, is it? But I guess you can find people based on that. So from a sourcing perspective,
I'm not sure. I don't know. Again, Carrie will know far better than I. My slight take on that, obviously there's stuff out there now talking about social footprints. I'm not sure necessarily what it is about Instagram that would be my channel of choice. I just think if I were seeking to have my 3 main recruitment channels, Instagram might not be it. And as I say, that's not prescriptive, but I think the idea holds that you can choose which channels you want to work in and have the bravery to walk away from some.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is, if you're recruiting Java developers, then or JavaScript developers, sorry, quite honestly, you are going to have a different mix, because something like LinkedIn, for example, may well not feature at all.
Absolutely.
Using things like GitHub, for example, or Stack Overflow. So
exactly, I think I think the point stands, which is that you don't have to do everything, and
yes,
and the desire to chase your tail of you have to do everything now. What's our policy?
Yeah,
I think is the way around of. I think it's the wrong way around to look at it.
Yeah.
So second on the list, then, when we talked about talk to colleagues, as much as you can pre-plan. So. Both writing and distribution. So a piece can be used. A piece of content can generate its own kind of calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you can use a big piece of work over an extended period of time, depending on how you put it together, if you plan it right. So, I think you mentioned motoring not long ago. You might talk about the advent of winter tires. Well, that winter tires can generate its own calendar of content, if that makes sense. Its own future planning. So that's going to come up the same time every year. Mm-hmm. There's going to be facts and figures. You can pull those out and use those to trail it. You can use those on Twitter to highlight what's coming up. You can also use it, turn it into a lifestyle piece. What else? Where might one be driving on winter? This sort of stuff. So if you plan it rather than believe that a single piece of content is to serve a single need, then I think you can punch well above your weight in terms of what you're required to produce to have a bigger hit with candidates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Start big if you can. So what we talk about is, there's thought and practice leadership pieces. White papers is kind of the phrase du jour, but actually, they are relatively expensive to write. So if you are going to have them commissioned, or you've got them internally, pull them apart first and decide how you want to roll them out. So it might be that you want to roll them out as a single standalone piece, as an announcement to the industry on your thought process. That's fine, but you can also fillet them for facts and turn them into listicles. You can fillet them for interesting headlines. There's a stat that says something like 4 out of 5 people stop reading after the headline. So actually, within that white paper, there might be 20 headlines you could pull out of it.
I just want to quickly tell you something, because you just used the word listicles. It's the second time I've heard listicles in the last couple of days. My wife who's a marketing director, was talking about various different forms of content. And she said, lists, for example, or listicles. And then she said, tests, for example, or testicles.
well, I do. I don't think it.
Yeah, no, that was. She'd already done about 5 or 6 before that, but then she came on to listicles and then testicles. But anyway,
just as a side point, on a list, if you are doing lists, always have an odd number, never an even. Odd numbers are strangely regarded as strangely specific. So the assumption is you've done your research. If you do top 10, people assume that you have just pulled together 10 that you could think of. If you do 9, people assume that you have filtered them.
Interesting. So, it gives it more credibility that you're thinking.
More credibility and a higher click-through rate. So
wow. Okay.
So
that's terrible, but true.
But
okay.
True. Always try and come up with an odd number. 17 things to know about whatever.
Yeah, because they think there's no fillers in there. People think there's no fillers in there. There is only 17 things, and these are all of them, and it's comprehensive. It's probably
if it was 20, I'd probably made a load up because I needed to get to 20. But if it's 17, then obviously I made less up. But
very good.
So just as a side point, but start big is my point. And if you can, take these content and fillet them first to decide. You can roll out a single piece of content over an extended piece of time. There's nothing wrong with splitting source material. So if you are announcing something, or you've done a piece of research, or you are talking about a new way of working, flexible working, regional working, whatever it might be, there's nothing wrong with taking some of that and using it for future use, saving it for future use, and getting double your bang.
Yeah.
Because actually people want to have useful information presented to them in a bite-sized chunk, possibly, and will be prepared to wait a week or two, and actually you get double the bang for your buck, and it almost moves into a kind of a keep warm campaign where you're advising people rather than an announcement, which is a monologue rather than a dialogue.
Yeah.
So you can take all that stuff out, and in terms of repurposing, things like you might repurpose into a different format. So if you've got a piece of prose, that's very easily changed into things like a Q&A. If you've got a list of facts, then you could do it into a quiz. Picture galleries, for example. So if you are doing an announcement, or you are doing, a talk on your new offices, picture galleries are fantastic for traffic and are fantastic for social media. The visual, thumbnails on Facebook, on YouTube, and things like that, on Twitter, on tweets. If you can use an image, far higher click-through rates.
Okay, let me just quickly show you something. So, share screen, and my colleague Scott McRae wrote a blog a long time ago, like about 2 years ago, and we turned it into lots of little like kind of caption type things.
Yeah.
Best of. Could you see this? Yeah.
Yes.
Best.
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, no, but can you see it just now? You
I can
see
see it. Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Number one. Best of Scott McRae. Candidates consume information on their phones in erratic micro moments on the way to and from work. Talent acquisitions challenges to get share of mind with everyone they might hire now or in the future.
Absolutely.
That's from exactly the same blog. Number 2, best of, and we got 9 of these. Almost all recruitment marketing is akin to net fishing. Blah blah blah. So we turned that into, quite a lot of different little images with a quote in them. So there's lots of different little things that you can do like that, and I do like the idea of filleting content.
Quotes are fantastic. So if you can, if you can include a quote, and there's a slight dichotomy here, because the kind of banal inspirational quote that can be overused, but if you can choose a relevant quote, they perform very well. They perform very well in gaining interest and engagement and click-throughs. So so quotes are very good, images are very good, statistics are very good. So 72% of statistics are made up, obviously, but if you can use a relevant statistic as a headline, that's what people engage with. That's what people way most people click away after reading the headline. If you can get it into the headline, that's great. Just to make the point about picture galleries, there is a reason that most newspapers will show you children playing in daffodils every springtime, pretty girls unveiling their A-level results, fields covered with snow during winter. There is a reason for that. They are fantastic for traffic. They are fantastic for engagement, and nobody ever clicks away from a picture gallery. So halfway through, if they start it, they always go to the end broadly. So if you can use a picture gallery, if it's relevant, then I would use that. And again, you talk to your colleagues, you will have things that you can, your sales department will be driving a lot of this data that will be sitting in somebody's bottom drawer that you can use for a compelling story.
Yep, that's true.
Using content more than once is not old news. So I'm amazed how many clients retweet or retweet don't redistribute content that they've sent out on social media, particularly social media, obviously things like LinkedIn and Twitter, I'm thinking of particularly. They talk about, Twitter talk about retweeting up to 3 or 4 times a day before you see any drop off in engagement. And actually, the analogy we used to use was between print and digital in general was that of a car. If you spent £15,000 on a car, you wouldn't expect £150 worth of digital car to do the same job. You might have to buy 20 of them, but you still save money. And I think don't be frightened to retweet. Don't be frightened to redistribute. There's nothing wrong with that. You can change keywords. You can change top and tail. You can tag it differently for a different journey potentially. But there's nothing wrong with using it again and again.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
The other thing is, again, for repurposing content, use industry calendars. Again, it's amazing. I don't know whether you saw the Times yesterday had a double page spread in for their Chartered Institute of Management results. So they had 2 very, very dull typewritten pages of whatever it was, 15,000 people who have taken and passed. But that every year will become, additional circulation, obviously, but also it'll become a calendar point around which people who have got that qualification will always buy, will always engage, will always consume, both on and offline. It's funny to me, or it's quite surprising to me when you talk to clients about what are the big calendar events that the people they want to talk to are interested in, and they haven't done any research on it. And if you're the content around that calendar event, you can piggyback on with your interpretation, with some commentary, with, et cetera, maybe the CEO quote or whatever it might be. But you can use that content to drive your message. And there's no cost for you.
No, it's a good one. Absolutely. In terms of recruitment, we often do that around some of the big events. Something like Wreckfest, for example, we often do something which is focused on Wreckfest, or Unleash, or there's a few that we would do that kind of thing around. So that's another good.
And absolutely, but there's a kind of a whole. I've worked in the past with a lot of institutions. So ACCA in accountancy, or SEMA, or ITT in travel, and they are producing content for a specialist audience. 90% of which goes under the wire. That actually their remit is to distribute. So if you can help with that, and could comment on it or give it a fresh challenge or a fresh distribution, then you are helping them and you're not paying bluntly. There's a lot out there, and actually, you're right. Things like Recfest are fantastic. Things like the Case Conference in Education, things like RAD Awards if you're in recruitment advertising agents. That's absolutely. But there's loads more out there. And it doesn't take long to find it actually.
Absolutely.
And similarly, national events. Things like clearing for education, things like institute announcements of results, Black Friday, A-level results day, GCSE results day, national apprenticeship days, things like that. Actually, if you're not piggybacking on that, then you can almost be sure that your competitors might be.
No, absolutely. You will definitely miss out if you're not on top of that. So let's think about recruitment specifically. So things like when exam results get announced and things like that, that of course is a good one. The other one would be, I guess, at the end of summer, because a lot of people go away for summer or whatever, they say I'm going to come back and I'm going to get a new job at the end of summer, and also new year, new career. That's another one that's,
Climb every mountain, new challenge. Yeah, so all those. But it's true. And actually, one of the things we tried to do in the past actually was get data from holiday companies about who was coming back. because what we wanted to do then was, hit passive candidates when on return from holiday to be looking to move. So all that sort of thing. It's possible. Travel company was GDPR is probably a little bit difficult because it's not under fair usage, but that sort of thing. It's kind of thinking a bit laterally.
Yeah, I mean, January's a good one. People make changes in January much more often than they do at any other time of the year.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
I mean, January is a pretty loose definition of a national event, but it is. In this context, it is one.
It does. I mean, you're right. So the peaks in recruitment always used to be January and September, and I know from a media point of view that kind of it was about a seventh of the year in terms of transactions used to be done in January. So absolutely, it's flattened out over the last 5 years or so, and from a kind of a noise point of view, don't forget that's the area around which you're going to be competing most.
Of course.
So it's not an unlooked, not a complete bonus, but in terms of repurposing content, the number one thing I would say is, two things: use what content is already out there, and speak to colleagues.
No, absolutely.
So I think I was just talking about old content is no bad thing. I was looking at Forbes, Forbes.com. They do 50% of their traffic on a daily basis is to content that's 3 months old or older. So
yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
It's
not at all surprised.
Old does not mean bad, and you don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel. If you want to refresh it, that is a question of maybe a headline, pulling out a different statistic, pulling out a different what we call topping and tailing. But there's plenty of ways of doing that. Maybe change the tags, maybe change the journey to and from. Repurpose that way. Yeah.
Okay. Lots of really, really good techniques there. And I mean, I do say to a lot of people every single week, if not certainly every couple of days, I will say to people, you do not need to create loads of unique content in order to thrive in taking a content-led approach. There's so much content you can use. One other one that I wanted to mention was, I mean, other people's content that you can share, as long as you don't claim it's your own, then it's a really, really useful thing of generating credibility through association and through association with the subject, for example.
Yes. My friend, when you talk about purchase funnels, we talked about this in June. There's that element of advice. It's kind of inspire, educate, and advise. Being the purchase funnel that people talk about, and so that's why and the advice part of that is I saw this and thought of you. It shows. It shows that your audience. If you can put in front of them stuff that you saying, well, I think you guys will find this interesting, and here's our thoughts on it. You start to enter that personal relationship with your candidates, whether they are, driven to apply that week, or whether they just are driven to engage with you or to remember you when they are looking, the following January, for example. So absolutely, it's that advice element. It's that personalization that says, I saw this and I thought of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to mention two examples. One is Hung Lee's brilliant recruiting brain food newsletter, which comes out at about 10 o'clock every Sunday morning. It's full of content. Almost none of it's Hung's. Not that he's not a great content producer, he is, but he curates all of the best recruitment content that he's seen that week, and he puts it into this newsletter, and it's got a really, really fast growing following. So that's one example, and then another one is.
Cool.
No, you were going to respond to that.
Well, I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, absolutely. My thoughts: if you set yourself up to be the font of all knowledge within your particular industry, you're setting yourself up to fail. And,
absolutely.
And it's just so difficult to do that I don't think anyone with unlimited funds could do it. And so actually it's quality, and it's little, your comment on the news of the day is where the value is. there's another one. There's Wonky in higher education, which comes out every Monday morning, Wonk, and it's a fantastic sort of roundup of the week's news and things you should be thinking about this week. It's so powerful. Now, to do that is probably beyond the resource of most talent attraction professionals, but there's no reason why you can't use it as a starting point for your conversation.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. I mean, I stick to my swim lane when it comes to what I actually create content about. And even though, I'm in recruitment technology, I wouldn't put forward a view or a blog, or I wouldn't really write about something like assessment, because I don't really know very much about it. I know about talent attraction, and I know about nurturing talent relationships and creating talent pipelines and that kind of thing. And I there's, even within recruitment, you can split it up into half a dozen different categories, of which 4 I'm not really going to be creating content about. Commenting on related subjects is something that I would do, though, and sharing.
That's an interesting one. So there's something called Reexpression, which take an industry which has a similar issue to your own at its simplest point, and see how they have solved it. So there's a lot of kind of examples that people know about. One is the Formula One team that helped the team of surgeons design an operating theatre, because both of them had to do very complicated things in as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Obviously a Formula One car had 8 people working on it for 10 seconds to get it out the door, and they helped design an operating theatre, because that's got 8 people working on, it's slightly more serious, but it's Reexpression. So everyone talks about, the Toshiba wall-mounted photocopier, I don't know, because they looked at sewage pipes and how they blocked. I don't know whether you know these examples, but what they did at Toshiba was they looked at what the main cause of blockage in their photocopiers was, and they couldn't work it out. And of course, they looked at who else was dealing with blockages, and they came up with sewage works, and how did they solve it? And it was long straight lines, so they built a wall-mounted photocopier. Actually there's an awful lot to be learned from looking at other industries, and if you can be the one that's bringing this to the attention of any particular group that you want to deal with, you get the credibility of being someone who thinks a little bit differently.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Lots and lots of great tips there. So I thought I knew a fair bit about content and how to make use of it, but you're the clear expert. So you've put together a fun quiz, and I'm going to see if I can answer some of these questions, and you're going to tell me if I'm right or wrong and why.
Yeah. So the idea behind this is something that we've started doing. We have a pool of about 30 odd writers with whom we work on a regular basis. Hugely varied skill set, and also but hugely varied experience. So some of them are national press journalists, some of them are student bloggers, some of them are social media fiends. And actually, what we sort of through conversations, what we decided to do was, in a fun, we hope, or semi informal way, was just to kind of fire out, here's 10 things you might not know on an ongoing basis. So kind of once a week, once every 2 weeks, frankly, when changes allow or time allows. We send it out and kind of, they're not marked or anything, but it's just things they might want to bear in mind. What I wouldn't say in advance of this is these are rules. They are just interesting points that you might want to consider when looking at it. So I've got a load of questions for you. Okay. For those of you who might be counting, there are 17. You see, weirdly specific again, which gives me credibility already.
Yep. So,
shall we start? According to Google, how many pieces of content does the average person read before any decision was made?
Okay, so what I do know is Boston Consulting Group put out a report around candidate behavior. And what they said was an average candidate is going to look at 16 unique sources of online information before applying for a job. So I'm going to say 16.
Okay, well, Google say 10. So I'm not as I say, I'm not gainsaying Boston Consulting, but Google say 10 for a purchase for a CTA, call to action.
Okay, so I would say that 16 is probably going to be in a purchasing decision, a call to action for something like a new car or a new house or a holiday or something like that would be an equivalent to applying for a job.
Yeah.
Applying for a job would be a more high consideration activity than probably the majority of purchases that most people would make.
Absolutely.
So that would explain the difference between the 10 and the 16.
Okay. Which is better, a 280 character tweet or a 260 character tweet?
Okay, I'm going to say a 260 character tweet because a 260, if you're pretty good with words, then you can say as much in 260 characters as you can in 280. And the less people need to read, the better.
Okay, it is 260. Twitter say it's to allow you to retweet without copy and pasting. So it's to give space for people to retweet. So and to so without having to copy and paste. So
good.
Yeah. So again, it makes for ease on things like mobile platforms when people are on the go.
Yeah.
Does inclusion of images within a tweet make a difference to its success?
So I'd have thought yes. I'd have thought people are more likely to be drawn to, their eyes are more likely to be drawn to it. So yes.
Yeah. So it's early research, but tweeted images or tweets with images can have about a 20% uplift in terms of engagement, more likely to be clicked on, 90% more likely to be retweeted.
Interesting. Okay, so I believe that transcends into LinkedIn and other social networks as well.
Absolutely.
So I think LinkedIn tells you add an image or add a video or something like that, and more people are going to get it.
Absolutely, add an image. Yeah, it's early days on Twitter, but yeah. So yes, images where at all possible.
Yeah.
Use of as many hashtags as possible to ensure better engagement. Is that true or false?
This is Twitter we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I think false, and the reason for that is because if you put lots of hashtags in your tweet, you've probably actually got pretty limited content within the actual information within the tweet. So I'm going to say no.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different numbers around this, but they talk about 3. So 3 being the maximum, and after 3, Facebook talk about none actually. So there is some research with Facebook talk about none, but on Twitter they talk about 3 hashtags, and any more than that, you start to see a drop off of around about 20% in terms of engagement. The belief is
that looks artificial. If you got lots and lots of hashtags, you look as if you're doing something deliberately to try and get people to do something.
It feels forced. It feels, that you haven't taken any chance you haven't taken any time to really consider who it is you want to speak to. You're just shouting. Yeah. And somewhat ironically, people on Twitter don't like shouting, which I think is odd because they seem to like it very much. So, okay. So we've covered this. Retweeting the same content more than once harms your brand. True or false?
False.
False. Exactly right.
3 times.
3 times. So including statistics on LinkedIn headlines results in A, a 50% increase in click-through rate, B, 100% increase in click-through rate, or C, 137% increase in click-through rate.
Okay, I'm going to say it's 137%, and I'll explain why if I'm right. 137%. Oh, I am right, am I?
You're right.
Okay. Well, it's because it's the least rounded up or down number.
See what I did there?
So it's much more likely to be true.
Exactly right.
Okay. Yes, I was drawn to that response.
You see what I did there? Yes, exactly that. So it's the one that's true, and it's weirdly oddly specific.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing I guess is people. Yeah, I mean, they feel that your content is much more likely to be credible if you put in your statistics.
Absolutely. So should one use, if you're asking people to make a decision, should one use Arial font or Comic Sans?
Oh, Comic Sans, I'm sure. Arial is something. Arial is the most. No. Arial. because it is deemed to be the more trustworthy.
Exactly right. So Arial research shows that most people, or more people, agree with the sentiment of an article if it's written in a formal font. So Comic Sans actually is if you go into larger, is more legible, but people don't take it as seriously.
Interesting, yeah.
So you're more likely to engender a disagreement.
Yeah.
How many unannounced changes to its search algorithm did YouTube make in 2017?
365.
200.
I knew it was going to be a lot.
200.
I think I get a yes for that, because I think I get a correct for that, because it was so much bigger than most people probably realize.
Yeah, and
I'm not surprised.
I included that just to try and underline the point, really, that there's no way you're ever going to keep up with. The idea of constantly trying to second guess and game the system, just not going to do. And none of those are announced. So, it's a fool's errand, really.
Yeah. Which
has more influence on future YouTube rankings? So is it 1,000 views on the first day or 10,000 views in the first week?
I think it's 1,000 views in the first day.
You're right. Do you know why?
Because that spike is in one day is probably, it might be to do with YouTube's algorithm, but I think that 0 to 1,000 seems like a massive uplift.
You're right. The algorithm works on speed of views. So and also for those of you who might do a series of videos all clumped together on account, it takes an average. So speed of views is weighted far more heavily than total number of views. So your ability to influence people to come every Monday to view the video that you update is more important to YouTube than sitting on there for 3 months and pushing people to do it every month to the same video and getting just a collective number.
So a learning there, I guess, is if you're going to publish something on YouTube, make sure that you are going to do everything you can to get people to come and look at it as soon as you've uploaded it.
You can. So trail it beforehand with facts and figures, trail it on other social media with headlines, with statistics, quotes, all the things we've talked about. But you want to drive people to it. Don't put it up there and then that's the destination you're driving to for the next month. It's try to flip it the other way and alert people to they need to look at it on Monday.
Yeah, very interesting.
And again, YouTube takes the average across a number. If you've got a number on there, if you've got an account, that you're using, it takes an average across all of them. So you must try and do that for all of your videos if you're a producer of more.
Yeah.
So which is likely to perform better on YouTube as a headline? So headline A is unedited feedback of our candidate experience. Or headline B is worst and best of our candidate experience.
I think it's going to be worse than best. Absolutely. And the reason being they are just slightly more emphatic words.
They're also emotional words, and YouTube talks about driving emotion. So it's all about emotional response. So a like to YouTube is not a view; it's an emotive response to your video.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use it, then you must, if you can, in the headline include some sort of, you must watch this. This will change your life. Most of us don't like hyperbole, and the use of exclamation marks, and all that sort of nonsense. But unfortunately, on YouTube, it does work.
Yeah. This talent pipeline, this approach to talent pipeline is literally going to revolutionize your world.
It's going to
exclamation mark times 20.
Absolutely. So which is true with YouTube? A, high views is a product of high ranking. Or B, high ranking is a product of high views.
High
views is a product of high ranking, or high ranking is a product of high views?
Both.
Answer is A. So views in and of themselves are not that important to YouTube. Okay,
yeah.
it's about the emotional response, and that's something that people, I think, are when they start out, it's all about getting the views. It's all about getting the views. They want people, it's shared. They want people to have an emotional response to it. They don't just want people to click on it. And
so comments, I guess, are indication of an emotional response.
Absolutely.
Aha. Right. Good learning. Okay.
Appearing alongside your competitor's video is bad for your ranking. True or false?
Appearing alongside your competitor. So your video being right next to theirs.
Yeah.
I don't think that's bad for your ranking.
It's very good. So
yeah.
We're now seeing what they're calling power clusters, where it's a group of similar businesses asking for similar things. Almost, it could be candidate experience, could be recruitment, could be anything. But actually, what you're seeing is if YouTube serve up 3 videos, the 2 that are most closely linked will get the most views and therefore become a power cluster that you can add to.
This is not the first time I've thought about power clusters. My dad used to run Pitcher and Piano, the wine bar chain.
Oh yeah.
And they when they launched their Pitcher and Piano in Glasgow, I said to him, "You've got the wrong location. You're about 2 blocks further away than anybody goes. Nobody's going to go there." And he said, "Watch what's going to happen. People are going to come here, and other places are going to develop round about the same location."
Absolutely right.
What happened? Within 6 months, all bar 1 was open. Within 6 months, the Slug and Lettuce was open. There was quite a few. It kind of turned a slightly sleepy part of the city centre in Glasgow into a busy thriving area.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example of Reexpression. Restaurants have known about power clusters for years, and content is or YouTube certainly reporting the similar sort of effect.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know.
Just a couple more. Which do YouTube reporters better for ranking on if we're talking about an image, eyes or mouths on your image for your thumbnail?
Eyes or mouth? Oh, mouths, I would think.
It's eyes. Happy or sad?
Sad.
Happy.
I'm getting these ones wrong.
There you go. Thumbnails descriptions should contain text. Is that true or false? So thumbnail descriptions, it's false. They actually report a 40% drop in traffic if thumbnails have text.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And the other thing is the thing to make it stand out, contrasting colours. So that little circle you get when you're choosing colours on your little colour wheel that you get.
Yeah.
Go to opposite ends. If you can do contrasting colours, simple images, and the image taking the entire thumbnail, you get a far higher click-through rate.
Interesting.
That's it. How do you reckon you did?
Well, I mean, I think I did. I think I got probably about 80%.
I reckon you did all right.
Something like that. Yeah, I did. I just got a whole bunch of. I think the last 4 I got wrong there pretty much, but I got almost all of them right before that. Really interesting things to learn, and you were talking about Twitter and YouTube in particular, but I think most of the learnings from that are applicable to pretty much every other social network.
Absolutely. So absolutely, certainly around the imagery, certainly around the use of statistics, quotes, the importance of a headline, but all of that is transcends which particular platform, and again, the talking around repurposing, all that stuff with tweaks and little changes, you can use across anything and more than once.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, listen, I've really enjoyed doing this again. We need to do version 3. What are we? We're the 18th of September. I think we should get together at the end of November in about 2 months' time and do episode 3. But this has been absolutely terrific. I really enjoyed doing that quiz. I've just learned quite a lot from it. In terms of repurposing content, we spent a good bit of time talking about that. And a lot of your ideas are really terrific. So I'm going to make sure that the world of recruitment gets to see this video and gets to understand that actually there's a lot of things that you can do that are not going to take you very long. And you don't need to be some sort of world-renowned artist or writer in order to be good at content.
No, not at all. You can go off and do other things, things like domain authority. There's loads of things you could be doing, other than worrying about what you're going to write about next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do people make contact with you?
So I'm LinkedIn, Limited Scribes on Twitter. Obviously, they can contact me through james@visiblescribe.co.uk. Delighted to talk to anyone who's got any questions or any feedback.
Brilliant. James, really good to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Until next time, bye for now.
Have a good day.
You too.